Okay, good morning, everybody. Well, I woke up and, to my horror, realized that I'm being a little sarcastic. It's ultimately not that big a deal. Realized I left my handle outside, my axe outside. You can see it got just a little bit wet. Now, if this had been a raw handle, I think that's a bad deal. You're going to get some pretty awful raising of the grain. You'll have to probably sand it back down with, I would recommend 400 grit sandpaper, because I had been very diligent about taking care of this handle with oil. This is a fairly new axe for me. I'm not ultimately that worried about it. Running across, I can feel slight raising of the grain, but it's nothing that I think is unfixable, and unfixable pretty quickly. Now, my biggest concern with an axe handle getting wet is the top of this eye. This handle down here, this can get wet, it can dry out a million times as far as I'm concerned. It's not going to affect the security of your hang, but if this up here gets wet, that's where you're going to get that shrinking and swelling and shrinking and swelling that ultimately loosens up your axe head. So I'm very careful with this portion here. Thankfully, I had it stuck in a stump, and it was kind of like that. So I think probably, in fact, I can tell you what happened is, and I guess at the bottom of your eye, I can actually see a little bit of welling from the water hitting the handle and then running down. So that too is a problem. If it gets anywhere into the axe eye, that's what I'm most concerned with. So when I oil, I spend a lot of time on the top of the eye to make sure that those fibers are properly coated. Because another reason too is that's where water gets into the wood from those straw-like vessels that carry all of the tree's nutrients. When it's growing, that cellular structure remains, and from the top and the bottom, it will wick into your handle. So, enough said. Let's get started. This isn't going to be a big project. That's kind of why I'm making the video. What I use is a mixture of pine tar and linseed oil. If I am just recoating a handle, whatever the case may be, maybe I'm doing I love the way this smells. I mean, it is, to me, pine tar it's such a great smell. When I grew up, my family had a horse named Charlie. He was a dapple gray. I don't think he was a quarter horse. He was not a quarter horse. Dapple gray, wonderful temperament. I learned how to ride a horse on Charlie. Looking back, I just did not spend as much time out there with him that I wish I would have. The stable was not terribly far away, but when you're young, it's hard to get out there. And man, to me, it's like pine tar, good quality leather, like bridle leather, vegetable tan bridle leather. Maybe if you throw a cigar in there from a couple days ago, and it just kind of lingered and soaked into the wood, and then you'd have just dry, kind of musty wood with alfalfa. Oh my gosh, there's just so many smells there. And it's a lot of powerful smells. I mean, you got pine tar, leather, smoke, alfalfa, barnwood. I mean, it's like all this just symphony of smells. So anyways, I just had kind of a blast from the past there. Now, one thing you'll notice, this is pretty cold. I mean, it's 40 degrees in my area right now. This pine tar is hard. When it's all by itself and it's cold, it's hard. I've thinned it a lot with linseed oil. It even runs, it drips. So here's what you're going to do. Now, this is raw linseed oil. I don't use boiled linseed oil anymore. Now, here's the thing. It's not like I'm a fanatic about it. Like I'm like, oh, if you use boiled linseed oil, you're going to get sick. And it's like, I don't necessarily think that's the case. I've read a number of safety data sheets that say as long as you're not bathing in it, look at how I'm getting the eye there. As long as you're not bathing in it, I mean, it's probably okay. But I mean, I find for me it's mostly a smell thing. Like with penetrating oil, I cannot use liquid wrench. Liquid wrench to me, especially if I'm like under a car spraying a shock strut or something, and liquid wrench to me, the smell, I get a bad headache for probably about 2 days. If I use WD-40 penetrating oil, if I use PB Blaster or Croil, I don't get the same headache. I can mix together ATF and acetone, and I don't get a headache. But if I use liquid wrench, that gives me just a powerful headache. I don't know what the deal is. And so I feel kind of the same way about boiled linseed oil. If I'm breathing in those fumes, or if I apply it with my hands, I get a headache. So I'm not like, Mr. Environment, stop using boiled linseed oil for the bald eagle eggs. I mean, if that's your reason, then I have nothing against it, and I think I salute you, soldier. But anyway, so for me, I just switched over to pure raw linseed oil because the boiled linseed oil gives me headaches. But then again, a lot of stuff gives me headaches. I don't know that necessarily lavender, powerful lavender gives me a headache. Does that mean that everybody should switch off of lavender candles? It's just really a personal preference thing. Now, what I am using is really important. This is quadruple zero steel wool. This is very, very fine stuff. And what this is going to do is really clear off any raised grain. It's going to polish that off really, really nicely. And I pay close attention to up here to make sure that I just really wear that down. I really want the top and bottom of the axe, where we have end grain exposed, I want that to be coated really, really well. I'll get the top here too. Grab that, just get it all nice and coated. The handle's secure. I'm not worried about the hang or anything necessarily coming loose. The nice thing about doing this too is you will have a silky axe handle. After you do this, it is just, it's going to be so nice to use. Ever since I started finishing handles with steel wool, I can't do anything different and be satisfied. I used to use sandpaper, and I still do to an extent. If I'm making a handle from scratch, I will use sandpaper for the rough shaping. But what I found is, number one, sandpaper takes off a ton of material, even when you're at that 400 grit range, which should be pretty fine. If you put it on a palm sander, you can really dig into the wood and give yourself an uneven handle. Steel wool doesn't remove any wood. If you use like a double aught, the 2-0 steel wool, that will remove some wood, but not as much as sandpaper, nowhere close. Plus it's hand operated. So just the nature of doing something slowly over multiple repetitions versus just you throw it on a sander and you can just really get after it. Especially if you get like 120 grit or, even heaven forbid 80 grit on a handle, you can chew through wood so quick. So I switched over to steel wool years ago, and it's what I use, and it is what I like. Tell you what. The other thing too is, I can feel how smooth that is. That's just so nice. The other thing too is, it's cheaper. Steel wool is a lot cheaper. You know what? I've had this old. This is a 6-pound sledge. People talk about paracord wrap. I had a couple of real bad chunks out of this handle, so I wrapped it with paracord 2 years ago, long time ago, and this is still as solid as the day that I wrapped it. You can even see I've got some overstrikes there. I mean, this is a Harbor Freight 6-pound sledge, and it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. They do sell sledges at Harbor Freight that are not hickory handles. I don't know what hardwood they use. It's some Indian hardwood. A lot of those striking tools that Harbor Freight sells are from India. So if you're confident that you can know the difference between hickory and, whatever foreign hardwood that they use, I think it's well worth getting these kind of bruiser striking tools from Harbor Freight. I mean, it's a 6-pound sledge, how hard is that really to make? I do have a couple other sledges. I have a Council tool, and I have I forget who made my other one, but it's a US made. It's a bruiser. It's 20 pounds. It's huge. Honestly, it's bigger than I need for what I do, but it sure is fun to have. And when you really got something big you need to hit. So we're just getting this all taken care of. I tell you what, I mean, two of my favorite handles actually came from Harbor Freight. I'm maybe a little bit defective in that if I see a really good handle on a metal tool, and it's cheap, unless I just really don't need it, I'll buy it, just because with a lot of these tools, like especially a 2-pound, a 4-pound engineer's hammer, you can't buy a replacement handle for the cost of a new tool. So, that's kind of how I look at it. And then I if I break it, I just broke a hammer last week. It sits in a drawer until I find the time to put a new handle on it. And, to an extent, that framing hammer that I broke this last week, that has been with me for literally years and years and years. In fact, and it's not even a nice framing hammer. It's like I think it might even be a Husky framing hammer. It's just a California framing hammer. But man, I've used it for so many projects that I've built that I can't seem to. I'd never throw a metal tool away anyways, but I can't seem to put it at the bottom of the drawer. I'll fix it at some point here. It's at the top of the drawer, so it's a priority. But anyways, this is an 8-pound actually. This is an 8-pound sledge, Pittsburgh. My other hammer, and you know what? Why don't I just grab that? I'm going to grab that other hammer that I was telling you about. I've got it next to my anvil under an eave, but I better get after that one too. All right, this is my favorite handle, I think, out of everything that I own. You know what I did with it? I treated this in crankcase oil. Used crankcase oil. So you know what? For everybody out there that's calling me a wuss because I don't like boiled linseed oil, I'll take your boiled linseed oil and I'll raise you crankcase oil. And I put it on by hand. I'm not saying you should do that, but that's what I did. We're going to get this all coated. I'm not that, not that the mark of a man is his ability to expose himself to toxic chemicals, but that's my defense. I'm not saying I'd do it again or you should do it, but I did it. And I tell you what, it is just excellent. This handle and this hammer, this is my kid's preferred smack stuff with hammer. I mean, when they were little, I just give them a hammer and tell them to go run around in the yard and hit stuff. You know, and I got 3 boys, and it bought me some peace. It bought me some much needed peace in times when I much needed peace. Let's see here. Okay, we're still solid. Yeah, that's not too bad. I wondered if at some point I'm going to need to re-wedge this. You know, I really don't like barrel wedges in small tools. If I'm gonna have anything like an engineer's hammer, I'm always using a step wedge, because what I've noticed is on small tool handles, you look at that barrel wedge, it broke out that interior portion of the wedge. I mean, and you can say to yourself, you know, it doesn't make a difference because the expansion of the barrel wedge is providing all the compression that you need to keep the head secure. And absolutely, you're 100% right. But now you've got a crevice that is going to attract junk, and it's just going to fester. And so I really don't like I don't like those barrel wedges for smaller tools. Inevitably, they bust out the handle. Now, I do have, golly, I've got to treat this one better. This is my Commander. White oak handle, hickory head, and this one has, man, I made it to smack some socket wedges that I got from Muller. Made it to smack some Muller socket wedges. And I really didn't spend a whole bunch of time making this handle. I more or less just jammed it in there. And I think this is how a traditional Commander would have been made. I mean, that's my guess. I see so many striking tools, wood striking tools, that are just they're just a log that somebody shaped down so that the handle is kind of like a club. I see so many of those. I'm going to get that in there, and then we're going to get the top here. And I really want this top to be secure. I guess we're just talking about handles today, and I'm not going to polish the top. No point, really. You know, when you've got, it's very, very rough. Very, very rough. I had a super gnarly hickory chunk, and I thought to myself, this is so rough, you'd never break it. I mean, I couldn't split it. I actually could not split it. And the reason that I couldn't split it is because it had knots everywhere. And so at the time I found that one, I needed a mallet. So you can see that big knot here. That's that remnant here. And this just, oh my goodness, what a beast. So this thing is, I don't know, this is probably 10 or 12 pounds. I don't know what it weighs. I got 2 straps on here, and they work great. And then I glued the ends. And this thing works awesome for slamming socket wedges. Now, let's see. This is one of my newer tools. I got this 28-inch Pickaroon. This is a council tool Pickaroon. Great tool. I like it a lot. These are excellent. And I have oiled this, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. I've used it quite a bit now, and I'm super happy that I got the 28-inch in addition to the 36, because I do think that they are not different tools, but you know, maybe I think it's a little bit different than a boy's axe versus a full-size axe. I don't think that comparison really makes sense, because it's the same 1.5 pound head. It's just the handle length and the handle shape are different. The 36 inch, I'll grab that here. The 36 inch is a curved handle. I mean, it's full-size axe handle. And that 28 is straight. That's a straight axe handle. And I find that actually makes a really big difference for a couple of reasons. I can use this. Actually, you know what? I think the biggest difference is when it comes to moving logs. I think that's the biggest difference. You know, I do use this Pickaroon to move logs quite a bit, you know, whether I'm rolling them, whether I'm just flipping them over, you know, for whatever reason. The length of this handle and the curve lets me stick it into the end. And then the beauty of a Pickaroon is that when you stick it on a curved handle, it wedges itself up. And so now when you go to pull, you are pulling at an angle to the wood. And the more you pull this way, the more the Pickaroon wedges up. So the more you pull, the deeper it wedges itself into the log. So I have actually pulled 5, 6, 7, 800 pound logs that way. If I really get after it, I can slam this into the end and pull from the end. And I don't like to do it, and it's hard, and it's definitely not the best way to do it. But there have been times when I, you know, need to move a log through a fence gate. And, you know, what are you going to do? I'm not, you know, I can't stand it end over end and drop it, and that would be too dangerous anyways. You're going to crash somebody's gate, or you're going to drop it on yourself. You know, that's not good. And so I just throw this into the end there, and away we go. This 28 inch, and what I've also done is I've marked it at 18 inches. You see, 18 inches is just about dang the half of the tool. You know, you see that there. I just took a triangle file and marked it in. So if I need to cut 18 inches of firewood or whatever the case may be, I can just throw this. Wow, that already feels a heck of a lot better. I can just throw that down on the log. Usually what I do is, you know, if I'm just marking a log and I'm going down one end, I'll throw this down, keep my finger there, you know, throw a mark in. Or if I have a little hatchet around or something, I can just, you know, get my 18 and pop it down in there. This handle does need a lot of oiling yet. When you go from this handle, which is new, this handle to me is new. It's 6 months old, maybe. 6 months old might be too long. But when you feel it, you feel like you are handling raw wood versus those handles over there, which it takes about a good year to get a good finish on a handle. When you handle those, it's like awesome. I mean, nice. You know, you don't, there's no drag on the wood. Your hand goes evenly across it. All that linseed oil has polymerized into the wood, and it becomes a very, very durable finish. My steel wool is falling apart on me. This is the second, maybe third time I've used the steel wool, and you know, I use it hard. So it kind of crumbles and falls apart, and that's okay. So here we go. So here's that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Done 6 handles. I've got this guy over here, which is still a little bit raw. This is a Vaughn broad hatchet that I got. Did I impulse buy it? Kind of, maybe. But I'm glad that I did, and I did kind of pay too much for it. It was, somebody had, I mean, geez, this is kind of what happens when you give some guys a tool. You know, they know just enough to be dangerous. And I don't mean that in a complimentary fashion. You know, with this handle, it had come loose, whatever the case may be. I don't know what happened with it, but somebody had, I mean, they must have put a wedge in, and the wedge cracked off, but cracked off into the eye, like a good ½ inch. And then they just filled it with wood putty, with like wood filler. And so I saw this thing. I think I paid like $25 for it, which is more than I wanted to. You know, I had to put a lot of work into fixing it up, especially with this handle. But this is the original handle that it came on. It's really nice. I enjoy it. It's a nice handle. I use it for rough shaping wood, kind of like I'm just oiling what I've been using. This is a boy's axe handle hung on an old Germantown handle, axe head. Let's see, I don't know if you can see that, but Germantown axe. Here's what I love about this. It rings. Germantown steel rings. It is so nice. It's so nice to work with. It takes a wicked edge. It must be some kind of alloy. I'm not sure what they put in there. If it's chromium or some vanadium, I really don't know. But it is excellent to use. And I could tell if you give me a box full of axe heads, I can pick out the plums and I can pick out the Germantown just by looking at the patina. I mean, obviously, if it gets rusty and then you can't see any metal, that's a little bit different. But if you give me a box of tools and they're not overly rusted, every single time I can do that. Pexto is another company whose steel I think is absolutely phenomenal. I can do it with Pexto too. I mean, in fact, when I was looking to get into a set of Pexto chisels, you know, I was on eBay trying to find them, and I mean, good luck. If you find a complete set of Pexto chisels, you know, I mean, that's that's what a good work truck used to cost. You know, a nice set of Pexto chisels. The steel is just excellent. So I could pick them out. If somebody had a lot of chisels, you know, lot of 30 chisels, whatever the case may be, I could just go right through the listings and figure out exactly what I want. Now this handle, this is the, the $50 axe that's worth $200 or whatever I put. Whatever I put that title as. This is my first kind of big video. This handle is amazing. I love it. I love it dearly. And it's been a while since I did any kind of oiling to it. You know, I still use it. I mean, there was a guy that wanted to buy this. And he said he'd pay $125. And I was kind of like, man, like, I mean, and he wanted me to cover shipping. And I'm like, wait, okay. So you just want me to give it to you. I mean, just unbelievable. You know, and he said, $125 shipped and I'll work with, no, he says, I'll work with you. $125 shipped or whatever he said. And it was just like, all right, dude. Anyways, I have no intentions of selling it. I might give it away at some point, but I have no intentions of selling it. Now... Okay, we've got that. This is a raw saddle axe handle, and you know I don't like having raw handles just sitting around. You know, I feel like they should have some treatment on them. This is still going to have that wax coating from the factory on it. I haven't taken it off, but I'm just going to polish it over. Make sure. Now the thing is the oil, the pine tar on the oil is going to soften up the wax, and it'll soak down through eventually. You know, you look at the color difference already. What else is there? We've got this guy treated. The last last edge tool that I got lying around that hasn't really been looked at is this council tool pack axe. If you do not like yellowing tool handles, add some pine tar into your linseed oil. You know, this one, all of my base coats were just basic boiled linseed oil. And I mean, I've used this axe a lot. I take this is the council tool pack axe. I take it out when I'm camping. I use this thing hard. I've used it, golly, a whole bunch. And the first coats of oil that I put on it were all boiled linseed oil. And it's a little bit more yellow than I would like it. I'm hoping that it darkens with time. And you know, it will. It will. But I've had this for years now. I love this axe. I love this axe so much. I put the boiled linseed oil on it before I really figured out how excellent adding pine tar to boiled linseed oil is. Or excuse me, to linseed oil. So, all right, we've got that nice and taken care of. Now, the thing is, after oiling your handles, don't let it sit. You need to wipe off the excess. It's very much the same process as seasoning a cast iron pan. If you go and leave a thick layer of oil on your cast iron pans before you put it in the oven, you're going to have streaky, awful, sticky, partially polymerized residue on the surface of your pan. It's the exact same way with oiling your handles. If I have a raw wood handle, yes, then I might take I might take a day to let it soak in, but it will soak in. If you have a well-seasoned axe handle or an axe handle that already has a few coatings on it, it is imperative. It is mandatory if you want a comfortable, non-sticky, gross handle that you wipe off the excess. So I'm going to give that 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then I'll come back with a rag and I will wipe everything down. This video took a different direction than I was planning on when I first turned on my camera. But anyways, oiling tool handles, you know, we're in the rainy season in Georgia, so I mean, it's just inevitable. If you use your axes, you're gonna leave one of them outside at some point. You know, we try not to do it, but if you do it, here's how to fix it.